Hi, I'm Robbie Gordon. Thank you for joining us on Wednesday night. Again, we will be doing this every Wednesday night. Even when we start testing in the summertime, we will find a way to get you guys around the same time on Wednesday night. So tune in on Wednesday nights for Speed UTV and Speed Energy, Speed RC cars, SST. We'll continue to give you updates with all of our projects going on. Unfortunately, this time there's really not a lot of racing going on. So the question a lot has been, are you guys on track? Well, with no racing, we've been able to turn our resources even more towards the UTV project, and we've actually made a couple steps going forward. This is a terrible time for all of us because we really want to be racing, want to be out there with stadium super trucks, we want to be at the NASCAR races or the IndyCar races. Going to really miss Long Beach this year. We got a bunch of great fans out there, great drivers and great sponsors. And unfortunately, we're not able to do a lot right now besides develop and engineer. So when we hit the track, we will definitely be ready this year. And for the UTV guys that have stepped up and been part of our program with the new Speed UTV, this is actually allowing us to get ahead a little bit. It's unfortunate times, but it is allowing us to focus, or allowing me to focus all of my time towards the engineering of the Speed UTV. So I'll take you through today's presentation. Again, thank you for joining us. Over here to the right, we got the screen. We've moved out into the shop now. The first two we did inside the conference room. I got to be honest, the shop is where we want to be. This is where things happen. Obviously, a lot of stuff's been happening in the engineering room, which is behind this screen here. I'll take you for a tour of that probably next week. Then we'll move into fab machine as we start getting a lot of these prototype parts completely finished. We'll talk about the speed fast facts. Everybody wants to know about the fast facts. Horsepower. Is the horsepower going to be what we said? Yes, horsepower is still going to be 230 horsepower, and we are going to have a 300 horsepower option. Wheelbase of the first vehicle that hits the line is a 120-inch wheelbase. 120-inch wheelbase for the four-seater. Ground clearance, as it comes from the factory, as your dealer will roll it off the floor, it'll come up with a 15 inches of ground clearance to the bottom of the skid plate, 15 inches. 32-inch tall tires will be stock on the vehicles, and they will be cleared, and I'll start showing you a lot more body stuff today, but they will clear the body for 35s. Every week we do a question. We fire off, this is now our third week doing this. Last week it worked out really well. We fired off with questions from last week. So the first one is going to be a question from Robert Morgan. How readily available will spare parts be for the motor, trans, A-arm, suspension, etc.? When we launch this vehicle in November, we will have all the necessary spare parts to keep these things running. My goal throughout the next 5 months will be do a lot of durability testing and find out what kind of issues we're going to have. Obviously, we can't predict for a crash, so we will have to have spare parts, and we will have plenty of spare parts for you guys. For the guys out there that have double X's, that's the question, are you going to continue to build the parts for the double X's? The answer is yes. We will continue to build those parts. We will continue to keep you guys running out on the trails and enjoying your vehicle. The double X is a wonderful vehicle, and we had a lot of fun developing that car. Robert, I hope I answered your question. Next question. This one comes from AJ Starsek. I don't think I said that right, but AJ asks, can you tell us more about the cooling setup? On the four-seater, the four-seat vehicle that we are launching in November, it's an open cockpit car. I know last week I probably confused a couple of you guys with the closed cockpit, but when I was designing the body with our team, we wanted to make sure that we had a body that would look good, not only with an open cockpit, like a normal UTV has been seen for the last 20 years, but also one with a very stylish closed cockpit. So we designed the car to have a full enclosure, and then we made it an open cockpit. So the first vehicle that hits the market, the one that everybody signed up for, that is an open cockpit, four-seat vehicle that launches in November of 2020. But it will have capabilities of a closed cockpit. We'll get into that a little bit later into this conversation or into this presentation about what's the difference and what kind of changes do you have to make when you go to the closed cockpit. cooling system. Because this first car is an open cockpit car, and we've had so many complaints with the Double X about being hot in the summertime with the radiator up front, it's wonderful in the wintertime at Glamis. I gotta be honest, I love that radiator up front. But in the summertime, it's a little bit hot. So for this package, we have moved the radiators up to the back. They're different than what they were on the Wildcat X. People say, oh, that was on the Wildcat X. Well, that was different. The radiators were pointing downhill. It was putting the hot air on the engine. With this design here, the radiators are still vertical, but the fans have a canted fan shroud that points uphill. So the heat is coming actually above the top of the bed and out through the number plates and through the top of the bed. You'll start seeing some of that in some of our future designs or our final designs as we close in on the bodywork. But the radiator exits out towards the back on top. One other thing that does, it takes it out of a high pressure area. One thing about a buggy with a radiator in the front, we've got a problem keeping them cool because there's an under pressure that's coming back upwards from underneath the belly pan. This is not going to be affected by that because it's coming above the body, above the bed. So we have taken those aerodynamic features into consideration. Next question will be Thomas Miller. Are their units already completed? Seems like you're still finalizing all aspects of the car and components. Will these be tested before releasing to the public? Looking to put a deposit on a force field. Thomas, thank you for your interest in the vehicle. Let me give you a little insight on this vehicle. You know, people say, okay, what is this car? We have been racing this car for 5 years. A lot of the stuff that we won the Mint with this year, the 77-inch long travel, we're getting questions about long travel. All these components are revised components from what we designed 5 years ago. If we didn't learn anything in the last 5 years, shame on us. I can promise you the products on this new Speed UTV are improved from where we were 5 years ago when we designed the Double X. Yes, many of the components have been completed. Several full prototype vehicles with drivetrain components are in process of being tested for reliability. Some of you guys may have seen us out there in Parker flying up Osborne Wash out to the desert. We have been out there running some of our high horsepower cars. This one comes from DC Sooners fan, Robbie Gordon, Speed Side by Side. Can we get details of the interior and the screen setup, please? Also, will we be able to run a windshield as the aftermarket item? My family loves the windshields in my previous builds. Thanks and keep up the hard work. First and foremost, thank you for your question. Some interior features will be discussed in this presentation. A full interior presentation will be fully addressed later, but our plan is to be able to run a windshield in this vehicle as well. As I said, we've eliminated the high pressure area coming from the bottom of the car. We moved it up to the top side of the bed. We will be testing this summer with a windshield. We will do everything we can where you can plug a windshield in this car. But remember, this car, the first set of vehicles were built as open cockpit cars. So the radiator's in the back. This is really for the Western region desert guys where it's hot out there and you want that cool air coming through the car. But with the radiator moved to the back, that's going to be one thing to take some temperature out from inside the car. The thing now is, can we get enough cooling into those radiators to keep it cool and running? I'm pretty confident we can. As you can see, we've increased, I guess I'll have to jump. I'll get into this later in my presentation. I will show you how the radiators are, where they're placed in the vehicle, and make that job a little easier for you. Oh, there it is. As you can see, it has 3 fans. Another feature that we have here is we have 30 cooling radiator core space than what we had in the Double X. So we have learned from all of our cars, that's 30% more than what we've run at the Dakar Rally in the 3-cylinder turbo Yamaha. Next question. Is the cage frame one welded frame or is it a roll cage removable? The production units that we're building today will have a removable cage. As I do a walk around and as you look through our cage features, you'll see that they have forged tube connectors. These are not cast tube connectors, these are forged tube connectors. with connections to lock those in, as well as 2 bolts per connector. So they will be a bolt-on roof cage. So if you want to build an aftermarket cage, if you think you can do something better, if you want to make something stronger with more wall thickness, or if you want a powder coat or a different color, yes, you will be able to do that. Michael George, I'm definitely interested in getting one next year. I have a 4-seat RZR now, and so a lot of hardcore trail riding, rock crawling in eastern Tennessee. Any chance clutching could be geared towards that style more than my Duraclutch? I have rode with my buddy with an XX for 900 miles, and that's really the only thing I'm not super impressed with on Double X. All right, well, let's talk about the Double X first. The engine on the Double X is 138 horsepower. Because it's 138 horsepower and we're trying to compete against turbo cars with Double X, we had to optimize the engine RPM power band. And so anybody that's ridden a Double X, you'll hear them, they sound like they're revving to the moon. Well, that's where they make their most power, and the guys at Textron Articat were very good with their clutch technology, and they were able to tune that motor at very high RPM and make the most amount of power with the CVT. One thing about our engine, we will not be turning the revs of a Yamaha. 2-cylinder turbocharged does not have to turn that kind of RPM. We believe that our max power will be somewhere around 8,600. That's going to be about 800 RPM to 1,000 RPM, less than what we turn the Double X. This one comes from Jonathan Cole. And what Jonathan Cole is talking about is the UTT. I really like the long wheelbase version of the 2-seater. Looks like a mini trophy truck. Jonathan, thank you. That's kind of one of the things we were shooting for, but we feel this will be a perfect platform for all desert. You know, if you look at what a trophy truck is a 1,000 horsepower machine at 120-inch wheelbase. That's what our 4-seater is. It's a 120-inch wheelbase, so it virtually mirrors the wheelbase of the Unicorn. Not quite as wide as the Unicorn, with a width of 77 inches. But that 77 inches is the same travel that we just won the Mint 400 with on the Double X. So I feel that's a good package, and we've got that suspension package really proven out. One thing about the UTT that I think, it's not only going to be a great off-road vehicle, this is a vehicle that the farmer could use on his field, and he could actually carry more of a load because he has more space, wants to throw a couple bales in the back, wants to throw some equipment in the back of it. It's going to have a long bed. I'll talk about that tonight. One thing about that farmer, he can actually go out there and haul some mail too. Don Gray asks, the picture of the motor shows it's a Siamese parallel twin. Parallel I get. What is the crankcase? Who's building it and programming the ECU? Well, with regards to the engine, I think we talked about that last time, and I'll continue to talk about that this time. We are building our engine. We are building it with a group of very, very talented engineers that we've sourced from different companies around the North Carolina area, but we're actually using people from all over the world. It will have a Bosch ECU, and it will be tuned by an off-road industry leader. Anthony Perez asks, does the front differential have a locker? Yes, the front differential has a locker, so it will turn into a full-time spool. More details will follow in the drivetrain presentation coming in next week, I believe, is when we're going to talk about drivetrain. Like I said, we have to be done with all of our final stuff by the end of April, so we'll talk about drivetrain even more next week. We've scratched on it last week. We'll talk about it a little bit this week, but we'll really get into the drivetrain next week. Ron Beardsley, are they adaptable to long travel suspension? That's an interesting question. The rules that we've been racing with up until this year have been 77 inches wide. Is 77 inches not long enough for you, or are you wanting to make long travel suspension? With regards to making long travel suspension, a guy can go out there for his own vehicle and he can make whatever he wants. For long travel in the aftermarket, that'll be something up for discussion at a later time and day. They come factory with 77 inches width, with 25 inches of usable travel. I believe that's the best there is in the industry today. R&P, Can we hear more about the rack electric-hydraulic combo? I'd like to know more about this. Is the hydraulic an internal dampener with a servo motor being electric? The electric-hydraulic combo provides assistance like any ram-assisted steering, as well as helping to reduce effects of impact of the wheel being transferred back to the driver's hands. I'm going to flick over to page 21 and I'll show you actually the steering rack that's going to be in this car, so you guys have an understanding of what we're building for these vehicles and what the components look like. Steering rack. I'll zoom in if you want to zoom in that one to get a little better. This is what we call electro-hydraulic. So the steering wheel and steering U-joints will come in through this joint here. This will turn us a traditional rack. We've been able, with this offset alignment rod end mount, we've been able to optimize the width of the steering rack to give us more stability left and right, fore and aft. So there's more stability here, but we get the travel back by coming into these areas. Down here you'll see a hydraulic piston, there's a ram here, and there's two hydraulic ports right here. So this is what we call a hydroelectric power steering unit. Now the electric part of it will be the pump. The pump will be an electric pump as of today, and we've been doing a lot of testing with that. We feel pretty confident in that component. Question about shocks. Being that the shocks are not standard. Curious what you mean by not standard. They're definitely not standard, and there's nothing like it in the UTV industry as of today. They will be a 3.25 shock. Will shock tuners be able to get parts to valve? And what about springs? Does anybody make a 3.75 spring if you want to change rates or run a better made spring? The answer is springs are readily available. Spring companies make springs on a daily basis. There will definitely be springs available for tuning the vehicle. You know, if you have a heavier set of riders in it, or you want to go to a different terrain compared to what we set the cars up for as a factory, you're welcome to do that. Will there be parts available? Yes, there'll be parts available. There'll be pistons available. They will be very different to valve than anything you've valved in the past. They will not have a shim stack like a lot of other cars. This is some of the technology that I have been running for the last 25 to 30 years, and you guys are finally going to get a real shock that really is on the front of the unicorn. You'll get something that we've been running for a long time. So I think as far as the ability to tune it, yeah, once you get inside there, you'll be able to tune it. Will you be able to get piston parts? Of course, we'll make parts for you guys. There'll be springs available, and we look forward to seeing what you guys can come up with on these things. One thing I can promise you, these are going to be some of the most adjustable shocks ever provided on a production UTV. What I mean by that, they have adjustable external compression and rebound separate. So you can actually get in there and you can tune your compression and your rebound separately throughout the travel. So these are position sensitive, very different than what the UTV industry is seeing, probably different from what a lot of the off-road industry is seeing as well. Look forward to finally introducing our products out to the general public. Chassis. Will the chassis have specific front and rear tie-down points? MIDI models no longer offer this, which is dumb. How are you supposed to trailer it? The aftermarket end has had to fix this for Can-Am Polaris. The way we'll be tying down the vehicles, you'll see a few opportunities today on how you can tie down vehicles, but there will be some suspension component areas. You can do a strap around the front A-arms. That's already been in process. I've been hauling the cars around for a couple of years like this on a double X, and we will put a tie down point on the trailer arm in the rear so you can actually tie it down from the suspension, which will let the car sit and ride and float and not be tied down the trailer. So when you go through a bump, it actually doesn't soften up the car and bounce around. So yes, we'll take this into consideration. Thank you for your question, and we'll definitely build this into our vehicle, and we'll show you some other ways you can tie the vehicle down throughout our presentation. Question about engine, wet sump or dry sump, location of the oil filter, mounted vertical so you can change with less mess, and prime new filters. Is this an option? The engine will feature a dry sump. As for the oil filter, we will make it easily accessible for you. So yes, it will have a dry sump, and the oil filter will be easy to change the oil filter for your maintenance. This week's presentation, I can finally get into this week's presentation. We got the chassis here behind us again. We will post this on Speed UTV's website at the end, so you can actually go through the presentation at your own speed. In case I missed anything, you can actually zoom in and zoom out of some of those. What's that?
Email it to them tomorrow. We'll email them the presentation.
Yep, and everybody that has ordered a Speed UTV, you will start getting your presentations next week before we have our press release every evening. So plan on seeing it 2 to 3 hours before we have our press release. So if you have questions or things you want to look about, or you want to ask questions throughout this, we will send that to you guys early, and we look forward to your comments. Shocks. I want to talk more about the shock absorber again. This is a Speed UTV internal bypass tube shock. It is a 3.25 bypass with 12 inches of stroke. It has a 360-degree spinning reservoir. One shock fits all 4 corners on the Speed UTV. Very different from anything I've seen in the off-road industry, or even probably in the aftermarket industry for production cars or whatever it is. It's different. Yeah, Daniel can actually bring a shock over here and we can kind of show you one of the shocks and do some details of that. Give us a second. Let's crack that reservoir loose a little bit, Daniel. Is the reservoir loose? Go for it. So this is one of the shocks that we modeled off of. I actually originally built these shocks back in the day. When I tell you when they're built, you're gonna say, what? These were built in 1994. I built them for Mark's Post 4-wheel drive. And as you can see here, the reservoir spins 360 degrees. I know there's manufacturers that have launched shocks this year, but we've had these things for, what, 26 years? They've been around for a long time. Internal bypass. This is what's going to be on the Speed UTV. We will have external independently adjustable rebound and compression. There will be dual rate, so you will be able to change your top rate and bottom rate, and we will have secondary sliders. This will be an aluminum outside body cam. So it will be a full aluminum shock with a steel internal cam. Dual rate, finned reservoir. Bearing specs, I think we've talked about those before. I'll kind of zoom in here. These are a monoball style bearing with a high misalignment built into the bearing, with boots protecting them to keep them from rusting and corrosion. Electro-Hydraulic power steering, 1.75 to 1 ratio, less than a half a degree of bump steer throughout 25 inches of wheel travel. Hydraulic down here on this side, which runs this ram. Tie rod mounts in the middle. Gear, rack and pinion style steering up top. For sure the strongest power steering in the UTV industry. Very similar to what we use on our current trophy trucks, what I've used on the Dakar Hummers. This is going to be a game changer for the UTV industry. Bulkhead, patented bulkhead. This is stuff that I've been working on for the last 2 years with the trophy truck. We have adapted this over to the UTV. This mounts the suspension, the steering, the front differential all in one structure. I'll zoom it in here where you can see it. This aluminum structure that contains the steering rack, front diff, CV's locking system, houses the anti-roll bar, it houses the pivot points for all suspension. This will be a pressure casted component that will get final CNC machined for proper clearances. Structurally on the front of the car, this is a lifesaver on strength. It's amazing how much stronger it is compared to a steel chassis in the front of the car. It also ties all the suspension components together properly, and that means they're always going to stay true. Okay, what happens if I jump off a big ledge and I hit a rock? Well, think about if you had a Polaris or Can-Am, you're pretty much scrapping your whole chassis and your front diff. Here you'll scrap your front diff, plug a new one back on, and you'll be off and running to the races again or out having fun. Wider rear bed frame. One thing when we were designing this car, I wanted to make it very easy to get the engine out of it. So we split the two clamps here and here. This whole section right here, I'll do a color next week where that comes off. Easy access for dealers, easy access for manufacturing, assembling the engine, drivetrain, all of it all in one unit, roll it under the car and plug it in. While doing this, we had room now for 3 big radiator fans, huge 35-inch tall tire in the bed, and still keep our chassis structure from the side so it still looks like what we presented to you at Sandsports. And I'll show you that in the body. There's the body. This is the side profile of the Speed UTV. Now there's been some confusion about Speed UTV and Speed UTT. The Speed UTV 2-seat and 4-seat is a short bed, very, very, very short bed, truck bed. And I'll get into that more throughout this presentation. But there is 3 different vehicles that are coming out of the Speed UTV platform right from the get-go. One thing about it, from this section right here and this section right here, all 3 cars will change in the rear door area. Now what does that mean? That means that when we go to a 2-seater, the rear seats are now the front seats. So the fuel tank stays in the same position. The driver and passenger just move to the back seat. This section here comes out. This section slides forward. It allows us to build 3 chassis all in one design. This is how we're doing it. This kind of shows all 3 of them. A lot of people have the question, okay, well, if one car is 110 inches, how long is the car overall? Well, if you take 16 inches of half the front tire and 25 inches of the rear, from the center of the rear to the back of the bed, it's an added 41 inches. Added 41 inches from the wheelbase to come up with your overall length of your vehicle. So if you want the 2-seater, it's 96 plus 41. If you want the UTT, it's 110 plus 41. And if you want a 4-seater, it's 120 plus 41. So those will give you your numbers for your overall, if you're wondering if it's going to fit inside your trailer. A lot of people ask me, well, how are you going to fit it through the wheel wells? Well, with a 32-inch tall tire, positive locking, low range, click that baby in low and drive right over the top of the wheel wells, and you can fit a 77-inch wide car inside your hauler, no problem. The biggest thing you need to check with yourself is how wide is the door opening? That's the biggest question. The wheel wells, that's not a problem. It'll drive up and over those wheel wells, no problem. With the tires being out in front of the bodywork, you should be able to put this thing against the wall and drive up the wall. All right, so this is, we talked about the body, we talked about designing the body, why we designed the car like this, very different from anybody else in the industry that I'm aware of, because if you look at everybody else's cabin closure, they look like a severe afterthought. They're actually very ugly. And one thing I want to do with Speed UTV is I want it to flow, I want it to have style. And that's one thing we focused on right from the get-go. So we designed a 4-seat enclosed car. We will not be putting the top on it. And the question is, can I put the top on a car that I buy today? That answer is yes and no. You can put it on, it will bolt on, but by that time you might as well start with a completely new car, because you're going to have to get new doors that have windows that roll up and down. You're going to have to buy the cabin closure. You have to take your radiator, throw it away, put a different radiator up in the front. You're going to have to run radiator lines through the front of the car. They are 2 completely different cars, but they sit on the same chassis. So yes, you can convert it, but it's going to be easier just to order a cabin closed 4-seater when they come, and there is going to be a difference in price. This upgrade will be, well, there's the 2-seater. The upgrade to the 4-seat cabin closed, you're looking at between $6,000 and $8,000 extra on top of the base unit. So we will offer that vehicle come January. We'll be working on that once we release this car, but right now, open cab cars are what's coming to the general public in January. well, sorry, November through January. Here's the latest on the body. Every week we get a little bit more on the body. I change my mind, we reshape or remodify. Remember, I only have about 20 more days of changing my mind before we got to push send on tooling, and this thing's heading off to the factory. So just work with me here a little bit. We're trying to work with the style and the design. As you see here, these are different colored plastics. This is where the car changes components, but it's coming along. It's starting to get to something I really like. The reason for the number plates on all cars, that will be a radiator exit point. So it'll exit out the inside and behind the backside. Back to a top view. This is what we started with as a top view, as a graphic rendering. David did a wonderful job on the graphic renderings of this. Now we've moved into the CAD side. There's the top view of the CAD body. It gives you a better idea. Okay, here's the chassis, here's the tire, here's this bed that he's been talking about. 35 inches, 48 inches. So 48 inches wide. You can configure your 35-inch tire to one side. You can put a big box and a nice chest back there. One thing, you know, last year at Glamis during Thanksgiving, I went out there and we were hanging out the back of the hill. I had no place to sit besides sit in my car, which that's probably the safest place, but I really wanted to hang out and sit in the tailgate. Well, we decided at that point we would go ahead and build us a tailgate UTV. Yes, this has been done in the past. The original Yamaha Rhino had this, but it was never intended for a high-performance sport unit like what this is. These are our CAD drawing, or these are our artist rendering drawings, front and rear. Then we're going to slide over to front and rear of the vehicle. As you can see, we're heading through CAD. We're now working on windshields, radiator duct, how we're funneling the radiator in, so when we do move the radiator and the intercooler and the AC condenser to the front, we got to make sure we have enough cooling for all that as well. So this is wider than what we've done on past vehicles by about 8 inches. It'll probably be the widest nose on a vehicle, which is going to give us the opportunity for the biggest radiator and the most cooling as well. The bed, still working on this. Not 100% happy with that. Stay tuned. Next week we'll have some new tailgate. I'm sure next week we'll have some headlight stuff. This thing's really starting to come together. This is a 3/4 view. I thought this is pretty cool to look at. It gives us an idea of, are these 32s or 35s?
Those are
32s? 35s?
I think they are.
That's probably sitting on 35s right there in this artist rendering. Looking how much rubber's there. Maybe a 33, but this is kind of what it looks like in the 3/4 view. This is the front view. And as you can see, we've got a large radiator here. We're going to have headlights out there. For the guys that ride down in Baja, out on the highway, and you're worried about going down the road and having the tires out there, we've actually moved the lights out there as well to help you with the semi-trucks. Another 3/4 view. This is an older view. You can see the fenders aren't shaped. This is kind of, as we work through our rendering, just gives you an idea of where we're at and what we're looking at when we're designing the vehicle. Obviously, this is the view I'm looking for at the back. So when we're done, this is the rear view tailgate that I'm looking for. This will allow us to put a bumper under the rear for an aftermarket rear bumper, look a lot like a pre-runner. Put some plastic in there to cover up the exhaust. But that's what we're looking for a rear view. Looking at integrating the mirror into a plastic wind wing window. It'll have a mirror built into it. That'll be for an open car and a closed car. Bed. This is the question last week I probably had the most phone calls on and probably the biggest confusion. Bed is sized to accommodate a 35-inch tire front to rear. Left to right, it has 48 inches. So when you look here, you've got 48 inches off the inside of the bed by 35 inches deep. This bed is the bed that comes on the 2-seat Sport and the 4-seat Sport. The UTT bed, is there a slide of UTT in here? No, there's no slide of UTT in here, but that bed is 48, right?
It's going to be 15 inches longer?
15 inches longer, so what's that? 50, right? So the bed on the UTT, from the front of the bed to the rear tailgate, before you pull the tailgate down, should be right around 50 inches long. So it's 50 inches by 48. Fold the tailgate down, you can shove a piece of plywood in the back of that thing. You can haul stuff all over the farm. And as we say, we'll be able to haul the mail as well. One thing I wanted to focus on here is this is what's out there in the current industry. Unfortunately, this picture here, probably not a very fitting picture, but this guy had a bad day. But worse than a bad day, he had no place even to carry a spare tire.
Yeah, his main tire.
All right, and that's a 32-inch BFG there, and as you can see, it doesn't come close to fitting in the bed. So then what you got to do is you've got to mount them up here on the roof, or maybe not carry one at all. Once you move that tire up higher, you're raising the CG of the vehicle. The chance of rolling over even gets greater. I don't suggest putting your spare tire up on the roof. I think that's a horrible idea for the guys to do that. Over in the Can-Am, there's just not a lot of room back there. When this bed is all contoured, you really can't get a spare tire in there. I've seen a lot of guys make a mount off the top of the roof. Again, something I would never do. I always try to put the extra weight that I have to carry as low as I can in the vehicle, try to keep the CG down as low as possible. So when we did this bed, I was thinking about you guys carrying a load and wanting to carry a bigger load with more fun and more supplies to go out and have a day out in the UTV. Steering wheel. A lot of people have been asking about the interior. Well, with the Speed UTV, as you've seen, we've had to redesign pretty much everything. So we've also designed what we call a square steering wheel. The reason for the square steering wheel is so that we can see the bigger 10-inch dash in there. We were looking through the steering wheel, we were getting, 2/3 of the dash was getting cut out. I wanted to be able to keep my hands in the same position, but I needed this to change shape. So we actually made a square shape steering wheel. I think there's a steering wheel similar to this in a Ford GT. I think some high performance sport cars are starting to move into this. And we felt since we're heading there, let's just do it all right from the get-go and make all the cool components that we can right on your production vehicle. So this will be a production steering wheel that will come on the car. No need to buy an aftermarket steering wheel. All right, so now people want to know about the steering wheel and the dash. This is obviously a CAD drawing here, but this is a 10-inch dash, so a 10-inch flat screen. I want to be able to see as much as I can through here. We will have some very, very cool features on this vehicle. The screens that you'll be able to choose from, the screen share or screen mirroring like I'm doing today in this presentation, that will show up right in the middle of this. So think about it, your tracking, your GPS, all that stuff, you save it on your phone, you've now got it on your dash. There's an example of things you can see. You can see all your engine coolant temps, you can see your RPMs, your pressure, your turbo pressure, your altitude, your inlet temperatures, pretty much all the temperatures you want to see, as well as seeing your map next to it. So we will have all kinds of cool features. We will lead into more of this stuff when we get into the dash, but we have thought of all the cool things you want in the car. And with the technology that's coming through the cell phone industry today, why not just give it to you guys with a UTV? Wheels. This is something we've been working on. I've got a couple cool options for you. Are there independent wheels as well? There is, okay. So this is the view of the vehicle. As you can see, this has got that older generation CAD on it, but it does have the wheels. Kind of blurry when we get in that position, but this here is a bead lock wheel. All limited edition cars. Everybody that ordered a car at Sand Sports, one of the options that you got as being our partner from the get-go is you got carbon fiber seats, you got bead lock wheels, you got a roof, you got 5-point steering or 5-point seat belts right from the get-go. Here's the options we're looking at for wheels. We would like to hear your feedback on it. We have a spoked wheel, something I've been working on for a long time. We've got the new RG Trophy Truck flat face wheel there, as well as the OG, the original RG wheel here. When I zoom in, it kind of makes it a little blurry, but these will all be on the site. Love to hear your guys' opinion on the wheels. There they are, probably a little better way of looking at it. There's the flat face unicorn wheel. There's the original RG wheel. And there is a flat face speed wheel there. We're looking to work with all of our current partners on the wheels. But this is something that's important, and we're going to give you a quality wheel right from the get-go on your vehicle. Engine. I think I've showed that a couple times before. We have, imagine the engine, the front of the car is facing that direction. We have completely changed what the UTV industry is doing today. I believe everybody has their exhaust coming out towards the back seats. We have moved the intake to the back seats. We want to make this the safest vehicle we can, but also the most performance vehicle we can. As the air flows this direction, if we had the exhaust here, we'd be putting hot air into the engine. We've moved the air to the front side, readjusted all of the airflow, all the valve train, and also have moved the alternator to the front because we want to keep that as cool as possible and keep it out of the mud as much as possible. Bore, we talked about this engine before, 98 millimeters, stroke, 66.2, number of cylinders, 2, 4 valves per cylinder, forged crank, rods, and pistons right from the factory. Stock, 230 horsepower, 20 pounds of boost, on pump 91 fuel. Remember, you have to run 91 in this thing. If you don't run 91, it will have a sensor that will turn down the timing. It will be able to run on Mexican fuel, but it will not make the same horsepower. We've got to keep this thing reliable for you guys. There will be a speed key, 30 pounds of boost, 300 horsepower, uses a flex fuel sensor to detect E85, adjust boost accordingly. I think it says boot, but it means boost. All tunes will be carbon EPA compliant, even with the speed key. Catalytic converter will come prior to the muffler, so they will be separate systems. We've been working with our partners over at MagnaFlow. Richard has been a long time supporter and helper of ours with the Stadium Super Trucks, the Dakar Hummers back in the day. Great group of guys to work with, and like I said, we're going to do everything we can to work with our current partners to build and supply the best vehicle that we can supply to you guys. Ports have been designed. The ports on the engine. Oh, we got some exhaust ports there. There we go. We've changed the exhaust ports quite a bit. If you look at where we're headed here, the exhaust is not heading down and having to turn a further direction. This makes more power. There's probably a 20 to 30% horsepower gain right here on the exhaust port, especially with a turbocharged engine. Like I said, we are using experts from the NASCAR industry, IndyCar industry, and supercar industry with our head design to optimize the flow for efficiency and minimize hot spots. 12 millimeter spark plugs that will be water cooled all the way around the spark plug. Detected cooling circuits and ports for the spark plugs. Fuel capacity. I believe this is still the largest in the industry, 15 gallons. It has a high flow fuel pump that can run regular gasoline and E85. Integrated pressure and rollover valve. So it does have an integrated rollover valve built into the gas tank right from the factory. I believe that's mandatory by all cars. Let me clarify this, not only for us, but also for Polaris and Can-Am, but it is mandated, and this car does have that from the factory. I'll move back into that. We'll talk about a race car later, but we will make a fuel cell that will fit into this position for the 2-seater, 4-seater, and UTT. So there will be a racing fuel cell made by Speed side-by-side for the racing industry, so it'll be an easy upgrade to move this to a race car. We're not just looking to build a race car here, we're making a high-performance UTV for the off-road enthusiasts. You don't have to be a racer to buy this car. 25 inches of usable travel, front and rear. Universal suspension components. We talked about this last week. Upper A-arms, lower A-arms, shocks, wheel bearings, hubs, all four corners. Front A-arms, obviously only the front. Trailing arms will switch in the rear left to right. Hubs, brake rotors, bearings, all universal. Trailing arm, suspensions mounted in the pivot in the center, sway bars mounted in the center. This trailing arm can rock over that side. All the camber adjustment assemblies built into the chassis for you. Patented reversible semi-trailing arm, shock angle optimized for maximum rising rate Think about that. The shock rate bumps out at 90 degrees, and you have a position sensitive shock that will probably have 20 stages of positions. Patented reversal lower and upper control arms. Shock is mounted on lowering arm. Shock is optimized for maximum rising rate in the front as well. Forged aluminum upright, universal hub bearings 4 corners, fully shoulder bolts. Here's a picture of the upright. This is our production. This is not a race car. This is our production front upright. It does have shoulder bolts all the way through, as you see here in the tie rod, full shoulder all the way, with the threads being the position they need to be. That makes this bolt way stronger for the, we've been doing this in the off-road industry, in the race industry for a long time, but for a consumer vehicle to have this, it's pretty cool that our manufacturer's working with us to build us the best components we can to provide to you guys. Seamless tubing, factory FIA A-post. A-post, first to the industry. A-post, like the rear has an A, the front now has an A. This will make this car the safest car in the industry right from the get-go as a factory vehicle. Patented V-bars, patented spine, front to rear. Follow the spine, shock mount, upper, across, back, to the left and rear, back down to the shocks. It gives us a full spine throughout the whole chassis. Drivetrain presentation is coming next week. Drivetrain. We'll talk about locking front discs, how we're doing it. We'll talk about working with our current partners. Albans has been an excellent partner for me. They have helped us with this gearbox. We've been using their engineers, and I do appreciate that. We got some cool products coming for you here, coming late 2020. I'm looking forward to getting this car out at Thanksgiving and having a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us today. Ask your questions. Tune in next week. Again, speedutv.com. If you don't have a car ordered, you're probably not going to get one of these first 4-seaters because they're almost gone. We will have trucks and we will have 2 seats available. Thank you.
And on the last slide.